Hello everyone, my name is Alex Wahid. I am the founder of the International AI Ethics Initiative. Um, this initiative was founded by me and my friend that I met at the Imperial Global Summer School. His name is Max King. He will not be sitting with us for these next few presentations, but he will be in the future, so you guys should stay tuned for that. Today, though, I'm going to be breaking down 4 major fields where AI has already failed people in meaningful ways. The specific fields I want to touch on today are hiring, but more specifically business, healthcare, education, and scientific research, but more specifically like physics. Um, the goal today isn't to say that AI is bad, but rather show repeating structural problems behind these failures with AI so we can eventually fix them. First, I want to touch on how AI was supposed to help humans. AI is usually advertised with 3 big promises in mind. That being, it's a lot more efficient than a human. It's going to be able to produce a lot more tasks in the same amount of time. And within those tasks, it's going to be a lot more accurate and it's going to cost less money to do so. And lastly, that it's going to be less biased than a human. But when you look at real deployment, especially in high stake areas, a different pattern is often showing up. 3, 2, 1. AI often ends up reproducing inequalities, hiding bias behind a score, making decisions harder to question. So instead of asking, is AI accurate, we need to be asking, accurate for whom, trained on what, and under what assumptions is this AI being trained under? Across every field, we found that there was 4 major failures that kept reoccurring. First is that bias or narrow data sets often misrepresented an entire group. This can be shown within the United States. Often, minority groups are not represented fully within data sets. That could be from maybe healthcare because economically those minority groups are not as economically developed as those majority groups, therefore leading to the misrepresentation of those minority groups in the data set. I'd like to talk about proxy scoring. When an AI model uses shortcuts like a zip code, school prestige, or spending history instead of a real signal, it can often lead to a failure. An example of this maybe would be the Palo Alto zip code is known as one of the most richest zip codes within the United States. If someone were to input the zip code, that AI might just believe that that person is really, really rich in comparison to someone maybe using a zip code from a city like Columbus, Ohio, where often they're not as rich as the person that lives in Palo Alto. Is opacity. People often get decisions with no usable explanation. Um, this is honestly a big issue for students. Students will get a ChatGPT response and not know how or why that's the answer to what they were given. And that's one of the major failures that we're seeing today. Fourth is weak consistency. There's no clear challenge or reverse of what AI decides. Often, students or teachers or maybe even a professional using AI will not challenge what AI is saying or dispute it even, because they just don't know what AI is really saying because it's just so much more advanced than their actual knowledge because they actually didn't learn anything that led up to that answer. With that being said, we can come to the conclusion that these 4 failures are almost always the backbone to virtually every AI failure that we are seeing in modern generative AI today. Next, we're going to start discussing sector-specific issues that we're seeing. So we found that in healthcare, AI is used for risk scoring, diagnoses, and triage. The problem appears when models are trained on data that reflects historically under treatment. I briefly discussed that earlier, so let that topic kind of like carry on to what we're discussing now. If a group was consistently underdiagnosed in the past, so like the economically challenged minority, AI may learn that they don't need intervention, even when that may be false. This can lead to lower priority care or misdiagnoses, not because patients are healthier, but because the system mirrors past neglect. This is how AI is quietly widening healthcare inequality. Next, we're going to talk about a topic that I am very interested in, and it is one that I'd want to pursue further than just this initiative. Maybe even a field of study I'd want to look into in college. But I'll just quickly talk about it. Business, more specifically, algorithmic decision making or hiring. Promises, the AI that is used for that promises speed and consistency, but most of these AI models are trained off of companies' historical data. Um, Maybe if a company preferred a certain school like Harvard or Stanford, um, or maybe even an age group or background, that AI will learn from that pattern and start discriminating against groups. So maybe if a student went to Wharton instead of Stanford, they were then discriminated against. Obviously, that's not a great example because Wharton is a great school, but maybe like Indiana, Bloomington, right? A student went there, did very well, but because they went to a subpar school in that AI's mind, it's then going to be discriminated against or maybe filtered um, before a human even sees it. And this leads to thousands of people that may be qualified for a position just get filtered out before a human just sees it. Um, so, with that, one bias algorithm is starting to affect thousands and thousands of people on the mass. And that might just be for one job listing that's very popular. What about all the job listings in the United States, or all the job listings in China, or Europe, or Canada? It starts to affect more than thousands, maybe even millions. In education, AI is often showing up as generative AI tools, and it's mainly being used by students or teachers or professors, not necessarily by the administration, um, but mainly by the students or professors or teachers. And the big risk that we're seeing with this is first, and this is probably the biggest issue, cognitive offloading. When students are depending on AI way too much just to really think for them, this leads to their critical thinking skills weakening over time. This is because they're not getting the repetitions that come with doing the extra math problems or just doing the math problems, or even writing a paper or a research paper. That it just diminishes their skills and they are not able to do these really these essential tasks that a student needs to be able to do without the use of AI. And next, this issue being bias or one sided content. Gen AI can often reinforce stereotypes or present narrow viewpoints, shaping students' beliefs without them really even noticing. These issues can change learning, motivation, and fairness within the classroom, um, really being one of the main reasons I wanted to research this topic. To wrap up our sector talk, we're going to finish off with talking about physics, specifically scientific simulation and ethics surrounding that. Um, AI is often used as a fast surrogate for expensive simulations and as pattern finders in massive datasets. But many models are trained on narrow regimes and can fail on rare or out of distribution cases. Worse, some papers have reported headline numbers without enough information to reproduce or stress test those results. This shifts scientific judgment away from human reasoning towards a black box, weakening norms of uncertainty, transparency, and reproducibility. Now, bringing all these sector patterns together, we can see that even though these fields are completely different, the same failures are still being presented. Just to reiterate those failures, they're misrepresented data, proxy scoring that dilutes merit, oblique decisions, and weak contestation ability. Um, and these mistakes aren't random, they're structural. And if we don't address the structure, the sector specific fixes that are being put into place are not necessarily going to matter in the long run, and these failures will repeat and continue to happen. With these issues still in mind, my initiative proposes a lightweight yet decision attached framework that keeps four things in mind for every high stakes AI implementation or use. First is scope. This is essentially where we should use AI and where we should not be using AI. Evidence, signal ties that allow for real domain expertise, not necessarily status proxies that could lead to misrepresentation or, you know, the issues that come with that. Uncertainty, so essentially when or conditions to when a human must review a decision made by AI. So this most likely would be like hiring, like who gets decided for a position and who gets rejected for a position. And contestability, a real process with real reversible authority, not necessarily just processes that humans aren't able to replicate themselves and able to reverse engineer to see how AI got to that conclusion. And this framework will work across all sectors because it fixes the structure of the issue, um, not just the tool itself or the AI itself. With that being said, AI is not failing because it's too smart for humans, but rather because the decisions around it aren't designed with accountability in mind. If we structure AI with scope, evidence, uncertainty, and contestation, we can actually get the benefits of AI without repeating the harms that have already historically happened across various different fields. Um, and with that being said, I want to thank you for your attention and for listening to this presentation. If you have any comments or questions, I advise you to leave those in the comment section below. And thank you once again.